Welcome back, everyone. Right, now we're on to item 11, Plan Change 5E for noise-sensitive activities. Abby, thank you very much for coming in. Ooh, probably through Mark's.
Just before we get to the notice of motion, it's got a moving supplement to get the supplementary report.
Okay.
After we've done this one or both of those? You can do both of these, we just have to accept the supplementary before the notice. Okay.
So 11, doing 11 now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought the wrong.
Fire away, Abby. Quiet, please, guys. We're into it. Item 11.
Can you put your mic on, please, Abby? Thank you. Just press it and it'll go green.
Is that working?
Ooh.
Cool. Right. So I sent out the recommendations from the commission, from the hearings panel on the plan change, and this is just for you guys to decide if you accept them or not. Do you want a basic rundown on what the plan change was? Yep. Okay, so at the moment we have a rule in the district plan that allows for acoustic insulation near roads and railways for sensitive activities such as residential activities. It has several different ways of achieving acoustic insulation, one of which is to achieve a set decibel level within the building. Another one is to have a facade and there's a set reduction between outside and inside. This is problematic because if it's really noisy outside, the set reduction doesn't give you the 40 decibels inside. That is what is considered healthy, a healthy level of noise. So the plan change was to take that out and to tidy up a few other bits that weren't working. The hearings panel's recommendation is to accept that works, and that's what we're here today to do.
So questions?
Okay, have we got any questions? Yanni's got one. We'll start with that. Thank you.
I see Kāinga Ora were quite opposed to it. Are you able to give us a sense of why they were so opposed to it?
Yep. Kāinga Ora wanted us to change the rules so that the onus was on those emitting the noise to mitigate that rather than on the landowner or developer to mitigate the noise. We did go into that. We had a acoustic engineer look at different ways to mitigate noise from the road, and what came out was that most ways are completely impractical. We then had an economist look at it, and it's very expensive. It's more expensive to society to mitigate noise at source than it is to insulate.
But do you think that leads us to actually putting some more district planning provisions in to control the activities? I mean, I know in the past when I've dealt with complaints in Heathcote Valley, for example, the speed of the trains and the loads that they're taking has led to all sorts of issues with noise and vibration.
Yeah, that's one thing we did look at, is how could we mitigate noise at source. The options that the acoustic engineer came up with were to resurface all roads, because there's a slightly quieter surface that costs a lot and that is spread over the whole city. To reroute traffic, which would mean we'd have a real problem with how could we refill, pack and save if we can't get trucks in and out, or to put noise barriers up, which is basically means people can't get in and out their driveways, because as soon as you put holes for driveways in, the acoustic insulation is interrupted and the noise goes up the driveway.
So the important thing is the hearing panel considered these matters?
They did.
With advice?
Yeah, with advice from the acoustic engineer and the economist.
Thank you.
So, any more questions? Anybody? Yes, Tim.
Yeah, I guess generally, if you look at, say, we're trying to get 20,000 people in Central City, and if you've got a bit of noise now, imagine what we're going to have then. So I've never actually heard anyone try and push the issue onto the city or whatever it is, and because I know when I've been in big cities like New York or London or whatever, it's just the buildings have to be insulated because it's just city noise, and so wherever you are. So is this unusual for, say, Kaingaora, have you had this before?
Yeah,
past one?
Kaingaora has done this in several plan changes around the country. They actually didn't turn up to our hearing, so we don't know how far they would take it after we produced evidence to say it wasn't going to work. But yeah, they have been fighting it out around the country.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Tyler, then Kelly.
You're always last, mate.
I know.
Please remember your name.
Just to, I guess, to make it more understandable, in a nutshell, what would this, if we voted to accept all of these, what influence would it have on the current developments that stand under PC14 and the future developments in the area? I'm only thinking really for myself around the sales yard and the proposed apartments that go around that sales yard, but what effects would that have on the current developments that it stands?
So developments that are coming up now, if they've already gone through building consent and resource consent, I believe it doesn't affect them, but Mark can correct me if that's wrong.
So the plan change is a change to an existing rule in the district plan, which requires insulation. So any applicant for resource consent or building consent has had to provide insulation to mitigate the effect of noise. This plan change amends that rule. It doesn't remove the requirement, nor and the consequence of the plan change really is that it may alter the design of the development in terms of how much insulation they need to provide. The rule prior to this change potentially required someone to provide more insulation than was required if the noise environment was less noisy. Conversely, in some situations, someone may have not provided enough insulation, and so that comes with a cost for the property owner. And so what the plan change does is ensures that the insulation that's proposed in a development like on the sales yard site is tailored to the noise environment.
They've already got resource consent for that.
Oh,
It
then,
goes ahead as is, doesn't
yeah,
it?
that's right.
Yeah. And as far as PC14, we're expecting with PC14 that there'll be more development closer to roads and railways, so what it will do is make it more livable. No worries.
Kelly.
Thank you. Do we have any idea of what kind of cost it's going to be? I mean, I know it's a difficult question to answer, but 10%, 5%, any idea?
Okay, so the Economist says that they've had a look at a few studies, and I'm just going to read it to you. Waka Kotahi's study suggests that within 20 metres of a busy road, the additional construction costs for acoustic mitigation, and this is from not having acoustic mitigation, so ours is only a fraction of this, for a single and double storey building are 9% and 8% higher than standard dwellings. At a distance of 60 metres, the additional cost is 5% and 4%, and at 90 metres, the cost is 3% and 2%. However, a recently completed case study assessment conducted for Waka Kotahi suggests that the cost may be on order of 1 to 2%. Now, he also looked at how much it would cost to mitigate noise at source, and it's a whole lot more.
Yeah. So that would just be additional cost, not on the whole building, but just on what they would have done. Is that right? You know.
Yeah, so this is dealing with buildings within a prescribed distance of the road. If a building's outside, so if you've got a multi-unit development and the first two units fronting that road are within the defined distance, then they need to be insulated to mitigate the effect of noise. And that may be only on the facades facing the road as opposed to the rear of those buildings. And it may be that because of the defined distance the rule applies to, that the unit at the far end of a lane is exempt and doesn't need to comply with the rule. It's all down to where the noise is greatest, and that's closest to the road.
Yeah, I'm just trying to establish the context. So, 2 or 3 or whatever percent more to mitigate the sound, but not on the cost of the entire unit. So it just sounds like it's just that particular wall, or yeah.
Yeah,
Do you get what I'm saying?
That depends where, like it's case by case, because it depends where the sound's going to hit. If the sound's going to hit like that, then it's 3 walls.
The estimates that Abby quoted based on case studies, recognising there'll be a plethora of different scenarios, but it's some indication.
Thank you. No more questions. Yanni? Yep.
So just thank you. I just wanted to clarify if this includes vibration, and if any thoughts gone into that. Does this include vibration effects?
No, the current rule does not address vibration. Vibration is something we're looking at in options to mitigate from industrial sources, which we'll be reporting to the Combined Community Board on in June.
So is that a massive gap in our district plan that we don't have any controls on vibration?
We have controls on vibration in the context of earthworks rules, but not in terms of the subsequent land use development that's established, and that's something that other plans do have. So yes, it's a matter that's not addressed.
And just, sorry, two more questions of clarification. One is, does this just, I see in one of the tables, it's 100 metres from the centre of the nearest railway track. Mm-hmm. So this isn't, like there's a lot of railway land in the corridor, that special purpose zone railway that Kiwi Rail let all sorts of people use. Is that covered from this, or is it just a purely a distant distance from where the trains go?
It's the distance from where the trains go, because that's where the noise is. So we did discuss whether we put it from the edge of the boundary, from the edge of the designation. Okay. But that could mean that it goes further out for the people down here and actually not affected because the trains are over here.
Right, even though there's a lot of adverse activity that can occur in that Kiwi Rail zone because it's got very permissive planning.
The rule deals with noise generated by traffic on roads and rail corridors. Okay. We've also got rules in the plan that requires if someone's undertaking an industrial activity on railway land, they still have to comply with noise limits measured at the boundary of the residential zone.
And just the final question from me of clarification was, in paragraph 48, it says that there should be considered a wider and more in-depth review of the noise chapter. So is there a work program underway to do that, or do we need a specific resolution to ask staff to do that?
So we had a briefing on our program, and recently the staff are looking at a plan change for the central city in terms of noise, not just road and rail noise, but also from live music as well as Te Kaha. Yeah. That's looking at noise in a greater sphere.
Right, I guess I was meaning more across, like, obviously this is across the city, which seemed to indicate a bit of a gap in the upper external noise limits that we're allowing. So,
Councillor Johansson, obviously that's not in relation to this particular matter of the item, and I think we can take that offline and have a discussion between officers and come back to you.
Oh, sorry, it does say it's within scope, and it does say it was something that was sort of recommended. So.
This plan change is limited to consideration of noise from road and rail corridors. Any other matters in terms of noise in that chapter we would need to deal with separately, and we're doing so in terms of central city and industrial interface, but we'll report separately on that.
Thank you, Mark. No more questions. We'll go into debate. Anyone want to debate?
I have a mover and seconder.
The mover is Tyler and the seconder is Tim. Sorry, I didn't tell you. So move into debate. Anyone got any debate? Yanni, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the work that staff have done on this. I think giving greater certainty around a rule that I think was previously pretty confusing is a good thing. And I think, obviously, I understand the impact of the cost if we were to shift the responsibility on those who are causing the noise. But I do think we should consider what we can do as part of the wider noise issues in our city. It is inherently unfair on communities that they have to pay the cost of the operators who generate the noise and the vibration. And I'm very disheartened that we seem to be very permissive in regards to vibration. So I think, when I've dealt with complaints along railway corridors in the past and from highways as well, or from arterial roads, one of the biggest concerns has been the speed of which the heavy vehicles or the trains go through and the weight that they have, that then leads to really unfair impacts on communities. And I think there's no reason why that shouldn't be able to be addressed in a very straightforward and cost-effective manner. There's also, I think, we do need to think about requirements around maintenance as well. That was another one of those issues that came up with the Kiwi Rail when I represented the Heathcote area was the fact that the tracks weren't being maintained, and if they maintain them to a better standard, better smoothness, then that would enable the vibrations and the noise to be less than what was currently being generated. So, I think there's a whole bunch of operational stuff that we should not lose sight of, but I don't think that should be a reason to not agree to this plan change today. I think this is, some tools that will help, but fundamentally, I do think as a city, in terms of our district plan, we've got one of the most permissive district plans in the country. The adverse effects that are coming from it and things like heavy industry and the way they use our city and land use needs to be addressed, particularly around noise and vibration, urgently. So I'd support us doing some work on that as soon as we can.
Thank you. Any other debate? Right. Yeah. Sorry, Tim. You did have your name. Yeah.
Yeah, look, thank you, and I have a totally new admiration for you after reading through this and trying to keep the will to live. When it was going to the bold underline, the black underline, the bold green underline, the red bold underline, and the red bold dotted underline was, anyway. And it's great for the colourblind, I have to say. Look, we cannot put the weight on those that are delivering or creating the noise, because if that were the case, you couldn't have any traffic in the central city, you couldn't have any highways, etc. And at times you are in a situation where you, economically or whatever, you buy a railway line or an airport or whatever, and these things are already existing and you've got to just live with them. The two things I like with this is trying to curb the cost, so try and make the simplicity of it, so trying to help the developers and the house owners and buyers, etc. But also trying to be practical. So, and looking at this, it's just a nightmare, and I can see why planners earn their money, and so hopefully do lawyers. But I'm really in support of this, so thank you.
Okay, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm in support of this too. I think putting the burden on, I guess, transport is a difficult issue. I am a bit confused by something that happened in the subdivision that I live in, where a flying fox was taken out by council because of complaints from the neighbours. So I'm not quite sure how they both fit together, but I'm going to support this.
Thank you. Okay, no more debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Aye.
Good. Carried. Thank you.
Well done, Mark and Abby. Really good work. Thank you.
Don't run away, Mark. So we've now got plan item 12. Sam's happy to move it. Pauline's happy to second it. Are there any questions of Mark? Any debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried.
Supplementary.
Okay, so now, can I have a mover and seconder to include the supplementary report, please?